All right, guys. Well, welcome to Roll Radio. I'm your host, Bradley Miles, and I am here with a really special guest, Tijo from Arcane Bear.
Oh, Bradley, you're going to make me blush when you say things like I'm special. Don't do that. Thank you. It's good. It's good. I love having conversations with intelligent, brilliant people and sharing it with the community. It's one of the reasons why I started using my YouTube channel. So I'm really excited to drop in and have a chat with you tonight.
Amazing. Yeah. Super excited to have you here. Tijo, before we begin, just talk to me a little bit about your upbringing, where you're from, and then we'll talk about where you are right now. But talk to me about, early Tijo, just sort of where you're from and just sort of how you developed.
Perfect. So I grew up in kind of the western parts of Canada, in the mountains a little bit. And I kind of grew up with this two life scenario where there's one part of my life where I was always going to school, I was getting good grades, I was pretty clean cut, did my homework, I liked researching, I liked studying. And then there was this other part of me that would go and visit my grandma, and I would take my shoes off and I would take my shirt off and I would run around through the forest, and I would end up taking mushrooms during my kind of off time between when I was in grade 9 or 10. So I've skipped the early parts, but that I think kind of really molded the rest of my life afterwards, because as soon as I started taking psychedelic mushrooms, 16, 17 years old, the rest of my interest in research, study, and development drastically changed. So I got very bored with school very quickly. And I ended up dropping out in about the end of grade 10, and started playing a lot of music. I got a hand drum given to me. So I started researching and studying kind of really abstract patterns. So I'm big into Indian music. I've got a few kind of abstract Indian instruments behind me here. And this kind of marriage between plants and music became my life for the next 10 years. So I studied with ayahuasca for the first time when I was 18. I got this pleasure of sitting with a really talented female shaman who could sing brilliantly. The first time I took ayahuasca, it was just a dragon hole and then 18 hours of color. And then I came back and vomited. I remember very, very clearly being very sick, right as soon as I got back. I'm sure I vomited a few times during the process, but this relationship between vibration and plants was something that really interested me. So when I was sitting down with shamans, I was studying the music that they were making and how they would use rhythm to create comfort and then also vulnerability. So I spent a lot of my early years, because of my interest in vibration, I guess you could say, studying with plants and music. So that's what landed me in Costa Rica, because in Canada, I would have been considered a criminal for taking psychedelic mushrooms. And in Costa Rica, it's actually legal. You can legally take psychedelic mushrooms. I wouldn't ever suggest anyone sell anything like this. There's just, you find anywhere where there's cows, and if you know what you're looking for, there's mushrooms everywhere. It's a fantastic thing. But can you legally ingest them? So if you go to Australia, you can't do that there. So I kind of had this weird, this younger abstract where the things that I was interested in dubbed me a criminal for what I would do. So it kind of sent me on the road. I hitchhiked from Canada down through Central America. I ended up living in Guatemala for a few months. I spent some time studying in Peru. So I was getting to a point where I realized psychedelics were very useful for multiple things. And I was interested in kind of opening a retreat center. So me and my partner at the time, I saw in your Twitter about how I got banned from the USA. We can insert that into the kind of how we got to today's story. But we were interested in kind of opening a retreat center, maybe for something around Iboga, for drug addicts or recovering addicts. I mean, you get all sorts of people. I mean, you can do these things in Costa Rica as well. But what I realized is that it was my interest in business was growing, and that there's a lot of inverse negative tail risks. I love how I said that clearly, good, that come out of providing that type of space for people while they're healing. And I decided that this was not at all what I was going to do with business. Because as I got older, I realized you got to do something, right? You're given this beautiful life that you live in. And I figured work is kind of like this way that we repay our debt for living here, or getting to be here at all. I'm like, okay, great. So we'll find another way that work kind of suits me. So I started to lean a lot more into just understanding business. I did search engine optimization, PPC, PPV, advertisement stuff, learning how to get people's attention. And then, along this process.
Well, Tijo, just jumping in here, just for the audience and listeners here, talk a little bit about, I guess, the difference between mushrooms and ayahuasca. You're mentioning a lot of things. If I think anyone's unclear of anything, I'm just going to sort of ask you to unpack that. So, like, what is ayahuasca? How is that different from, what a typical audience would know as mushrooms? And yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Great. So ayahuasca and mushrooms actually have something in common. First is it's a tryptamine. So the thing that creates the visual aspect and the what we would call hallucination to some degree, although we could argue that semantic point, is created by something known as a tryptamine. So in mushrooms, it's a 5-diproxy dimethyltryptamine or something like this. And then ayahuasca, it's just dimethyltryptamine, although the ayahuasca is technically two or multiple plants, usually two very key ones. It's the ayahuasca vine, which is known as the Banisteriopsis vine, if you were to look it up, and it contains a MAO inhibitor, a monoamino oxidase inhibitor. And this part of the ayahuasca makes it kind of dangerous, but this is where the purge usually comes from. It's the reason that you need a dieta, but specifically what it does is it turns off the body's ability to digest certain things and then deal with it by sending it through your kidneys and liver. So your autonomic nervous system deals, like you could drink a coffee, Bradley, and you could drink coffee all day and you'd hit this threshold of how much caffeine your body would let into your bloodstream at any given moment. But when you take a MAO inhibitor, it removes that barrier. So things that you would normally ingest, send through your kidneys, gets you high, chocolate, bunch of things. So when you mix the MOAI inhibitor or the Banisteriopsis or the ayahuasca vine with a chacruna root, which contains the dimethyltryptamine. Sometimes in Brazil, they'll use the Mimosa hostilis root as well, which is another plant that contains DMT. So they'll mix the monoamino oxidase inhibitor with the DMT so that when your body turns this layer of protection off, all of a sudden the dimethyltryptamine, which your body would normally ingest and you would not feel anything, you get screaming high. If you've never taken psychedelics, I couldn't explain that part. Like, I think the best is probably to understand how the chemicals work together. But this visionary aspect, because you can induce it, maybe not just from taking ayahuasca. If you've ever read people like Dr. Rick Strassman, there are visionary states that we could argue you get from during not just sleep, but meditation, forced states of fasting, all sorts of fun stuff where you can induce the vision. But the vision itself is the most potent part. So I guess like ayahuasca in general is not recreational, whereas mushrooms have a bit of more of a playful side to it. Like, I feel you could take a small dose of, like, I take small doses of psychedelic mushrooms or of this 5-hydroxy dimethyltryptamine on a frequent basis, because it helps. You're like wandering around, you're looking at leaves and the ants, the sound of the ants, like 100,000 times more interesting. And there's no way to explain that aspect, like the wealth of information that you get more from the conscious field than in comparison with like because normal day life, you go like, I gotta like I work, I hustle, like I wake up, I sleep. There's like this routine or aspect to it. Whereas when you take either ayahuasca or any of these kind of barrier altering substances, where the barrier of what you and the rest of the world is like kind of ceases to exist, it's wholly impossible to explain that. But
yeah, I imagine we're going to talk about psychedelics a lot for the next hour, so we'll interweave in between these things. So you're in Canada, and all of a sudden you get banned from the U.S. Can you tell that story succinctly?
Okay.
What happened?
Yeah, I was jumping around a little bit to how we got here, but so there was a very specific moment in my life. It was after I had hitchhiked through Central America and been taking these plant medicines, and I ended up having a partner for a few years, and she lived in the United States. So I was in the United States with her. She had a lot of money. I was always in some nice M5 or a Porsche Cayenne or something, like having a great time. And so we're coming from the United States up into Canada, and I'm dressed ridiculously right now in driving a port. Like, this is in 2009, 10. Yeah. 2009 or 10, this moment. And as we get to the border, I'm dressed head to toe in like purple and yellow Lakers get up with a 7-pointed star on my shirt. And if you know highway patrol officers' badges, they all have these septograms or 7-pointed stars on their shoulders. And I have a 9-pointed star. I have an enneagram on front of my. So it's like this there's this weird moment that's about to happen that I am totally unforeseen, because driving from the United States into Canada like this probably isn't that big of a deal because I'm Canadian. So it's pretty easy for us to go across. But if you drive from Canada to the United States in a Porsche, dressed in head to toe in Lakers gear, it's a much different story. So we're driving to Canada from the United States. We get to the Canadian border, and my partner does like massage stuff every now. She loves doing deep tissue rolfing. It's like a structural integration therapy. It's crazy. I've seen her help people that couldn't walk just by how deep these people get in with their elbows and into your muscle fascia. Anyways, total side point. But she had her massage table in the back of the vehicle. So when we got to Canada, and she wrote like, what do? I do physical therapy for people, right? And they're like, oh, you can't bring your massage table into Canada because we're assuming you're going to work or something. Little do they know, just no need for her to work. It's more for entertainment, like that idea about our business being kind of maybe a relationship to our karmic debt or something. So all of a sudden now Canada is telling us we have to drive to the United States. So now I'm going in what would be a ridiculously stupid thing to do, which is drive in a nice Porsche, dressed head to toe in Lakers gear with Ray-Bans and a 9-point star in my shirt. I'm like, oh, it didn't even matter. Like I didn't had to have done anything wrong. Oh, we were going to get pulled over. They were going to take the car apart. So they, flag it's over, go over here, instantly start taking the car apart. And there's like, I like smoking weed. I do. I'm not going to lie about that. It was one of the reasons why I left Canada, is because I'm like, why are plants illegal? This is the stupidest I've ever seen. This makes no sense to me. So I love plants. And I have like a half a gram, maybe like a quarter of a gram of marijuana. I don't even remember how much it was, some ridiculously small amount. I was never worth the problem that it caused, but they find the half gram of weed in my tobacco pouch. And, I'm in a cell or like holding room for 4 or 5 hours while they check out the rest of the car. And that pretty much ruined my ability to visit the United States ever again, the only really downside is I like San Francisco area, I like California, and I like Hawaii. If California and Hawaii separated from the United States, it's like, yes, thanks guys. Just individual countries. It sounds easier. Be more like Europe. Just freedom to travel through each one of these, but more specific country style. So that was a really weird moment, and it changed a lot of things for me because I became a little less cocky about how I presented myself at that moment. That was, I think, one of my first lessons about how we present ourselves to the world. I don't mind looking and being ridiculous because I am, right? But looking and being ridiculous when you're driving to any border is a bad idea.
Yeah. Awesome, Tijo. Before we go any further, I just want to talk about Costa Rica, where you are right now. Is there any way you can give us a quick tour? I know it's dark back there, but are we able to get
Yeah. So we'll start with, this house is in Costa Rica on the Pacific side near a place called Uvita. And it's 1,400 square feet, and downstairs is all one big open studio room. So over here, I've got like a little chill out bed and like a spot where I can read books. And then I've got my kind of music station over here, like drum kit, didgeridoo, cello. There's a bunch of tube preamps from back in 2009. It's just old gear basically. And then I've got, I don't know if you'll be able to see it because of the light here, but I've got the kitchen. So everything is just one big open unit downstairs. And then outside, I've got like a shower, jacuzzi, bathroom. My bedroom's all upstairs and outside, which you can't really go to. And then here's where I'm sitting is we've been trying to redo this wall. I was drawing on it, but been trying to rebuild the podcast station. Cause normally I sit like this and people see kind of my back wall. I don't normally share the rest of the housing part, but I've been trying to rebuild this wall here. So the house is, I guess, kind of boring because it's all one thing. This is a fun part of downstairs though. This is a petrified piece of like achote. So it used to be a much bigger tree around, and then as it rotted and it turned into a piece of rock, it was only like the center core of the main part of the wood. Yeah. So The house is kind of difficult because I can't take you around. I do some videos where I try to like take people around. I show them the property. I talk about buying and living here, etc. That's, Bradley, this is one of the reasons why I started doing YouTube, is because I love showing people stuff. It's like, I've got turmeric and pineapples growing here. If it was bright outside, you could see all the ayahuasca. I've got so many different types of medicinal plants on the property. It's about 2 acres. There's a little private waterfall. Yeah, I love it here. I really do. This year has been a little tough on everyone. I think this is rainy season here right now, and it is not as nice. What's your least favorite season, Bradley?
Yeah, I mean, I love them all, but yeah, no, I totally hear you. Awesome. If it was lighter outside, maybe we could see the view, which is crazy. But I could check out your YouTube to see that. Talk us a little bit about, what got you to Costa Rica? Why Costa Rica? How did you end up there?
So I first started living in Guatemala almost every winter after 2006. And I remember 2006 because that's when 10,000 Days by Tool came out. I was like, I'm trying to remember things in Tool albums, basically. And when I was living in Guatemala, I got really used to this. No, see, in Guatemala, it's much more indigenous. You have like a very real relationship with an indigenous culture. People that speak Mayan, they're wearing traditional Mayan clothing. There's chickens running around. There's like 2-year-old children hanging off the tops of buildings with no parents around. It's crazy. It's like the freedom of a rural country vibe, basically. So when I got older and I started to want to like look at owning somewhere, the rule of law is quite a bit higher in Costa Rica. So I ended up in Costa Rica because there's a big music festival here, or there is when there's not a pandemic, called Envision. So every year I knew that this particular area was bringing in like-minded people who like to dance around in the jungle and listen to weird, loud music. And I was like, okay, great. So this is a place where the letter of law is high enough where I can own property. Because in Costa Rica versus Guatemala, if you buy something in Guatemala, you may not actually own it. It's hard to say. Whereas here, we have a local visible registry. Like I can go onto the internet and I can look up who owns what property just by the titles and the deeds, etc.
Literally a ledger.
Yeah, it's an open registry of property here, and so Costa Rica's done a really good job of that. Like a lot of other Central American countries haven't. You have a few that are quite high up there, like Venezuela, Argentina they had a very high level of that before their government started to disintegrate. Uruguay has been making some great strides. So I basically ended up in Central America, Costa Rica specifically, because there's a music festival that has people like Alex Gray that show up, and because it was one of the easiest places where there was still law. Like, in the decentralized community, we talk about like the openness of everything. But if you really want some type of stability, you're still looking for a letter of law that works effectively. Just going into total anarchy is no fun. Like there was a moment during the pandemic where people started protesting here, and I saw videos of people throwing Molotov cocktails at police. I was like, this is getting close to the breaking point for my stay, my stay here. But so it was kind of a mixture of things. The nature of Costa Rica is really nice too. It's one of the most biodiverse parts on the planet, aside from the Amazonian jungle, effectively. So it was like, I can grow ayahuasca here. I got some San Pedro plants growing. That was extremely appealing to me as well. So now that I own property, Bradley, now that I'm like kind of into it, I'm not sure I would suggest it. Like I'm not sure how I feel about it. Like there's times that I know I feel really good. Like the fact that there's like 80 pineapples that I've planted over the last 6 years. And every time I come back, I'm just eating pineapples that I've planted, or the turmeric tea or the lemongrass. That all of this stuff that you get from like having a relationship with the land was really valuable to me, but I'm not sure it's worth it. It may be that you and I are growing up in a culture that's much more nomadic in general, but it feels very burdensome to some degree to own stuff at all. Like I love one of the main reasons I actually own properties because my instruments needed a house, Bradley. That's it. If I didn't play music, I'm not sure I ever would have built a house.
It's incredible. Is your house is your house a tree house? Is it literally around a tree, or is it part of a larger structure?
No, so this one specifically is like a petrified piece that I bought from a
Oh,
wood
God.
collector. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's rock solid. If you were to come up here in person right now, you could try to scratch it, and it's
Okay.
rock solid. So it's a
Um,
column.
Makes sense. And then, Tio, let's get into some of the good stuff here. Like, tell me about your Bitcoin story. I imagine you got into Bitcoin as sort of the first crypto asset. How did?
Not not because I was smart enough to know anything. The first time I bought Bitcoin is because I needed it for utility. It's one of the fun things about Bear. The reason I bought Bitcoin is the same reason why people would buy Bear right now. Is because I needed it to get discounted prices on the services that I was going to buy anyways. Like, well, you tell me all I got to do is this, and they give me a 50% discount. Like, I'm a pirate. Let's figure out what Bitcoin is. So back when I was figuring out how to do like build websites and all this fun stuff, we were renting a bunch of servers with one of the companies I was working with, and they're like, hey, they're like, look, we accept Bitcoin, and right now we're currently offering a 50% discount for anyone that uses Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is like $90 at that time. I don't remember what year that was. Again, my memory is very liquid and colory. I can tell you the price, but what time of year that it could have been, like any 3 years in there. There was enough like ayahuasca and mushrooms. It's like it's all the same year as far as I'm concerned. Like there's no different. 2010, 9, 11, 12. It doesn't matter. I don't remember. But that first moment when I bought it was strictly utility. It had no conceptual value to me other than I'm going to get discounts on my services. Now, the second time when I got it, when I figured it out, it was like a kind of a two-part series. It was the first part, which is one of the reasons why I do the Arcane Bear still today, which is that I bought again at like $900 American or like $1,100 Canadian. So I bought it $90, the low, and then I bought again at the very high. That was the start of a very important process because I figured out what Bitcoin was, and I think it was this probably best summated in this moment that I had. So when I was living in Guatemala, I was living in this indigenous community, and they have music festivals close by too. I seem to like dancing, I think, is part of that story, but I found this card on the ground, and it was this colorful, like kind of, I don't know if you guys have seen Android Jones or any of these kind of digital artists that are out there nowadays, but they do graphic art, and it's had this kind of like broken graphic art behind it and the flower of life and then the Bitcoin symbol. And I picked up the card because I'm like, I bought at the high right now because I've bought again. I've known I should be buying again. But like when I got it, it was this card I think represented it because I knew no one. Bitcoin wasn't paying to make the card. It was someone that stumbled upon an idea and was wanting to share it effectively. So I knew, and as I've been I've done marketing for a bunch of years. So the best type of sales tactic is just to show someone this, like, you show me a good motorcycle that I want, like, great, shut up, I want that. Like I can recognize the technical value once I see the kind of specs of it. But, I don't know much about technology, like per se how the coding works. It was the choice that was the biggest seller. It was the fact that here's the ability to choose the money that you want to use, and there's no government that can intermediate that necessarily, right? And to a large degree, I think that the whole crypto space represents this. And even I'm not a maximalist in any way, shape, or form. It was that core concept that we could have our own money, right? Like indigenous cultures have used shells and cacao beans. It was a tokenized gratitude. That's what I felt money was. And it was just different variations of tokenized gratitude too, because you definitely someone usually doesn't pay you if you save their life. They usually give you like something that they've made or something that's dear to important to them, like a watch from a family member or something. It's not I'm like, oh, quick, take my money. Like they're trying to give you a token, a tokenized form of gratitude. That's what I always kind of felt it was. That choice to me that's when I was sold. But I made the first big mistake of any, like, say, investor or trader. I bought right at the top. I bought the hype effectively again. And that started the process of studying and learning maybe, people get down on trading, but investing's trading too. It's like pulling a trigger, right? You want to be able to pull the trigger effectively. The best way to get good at firing a gun is to fire that gun often. And investing's kind of like this. You need to pull the trigger. And a lot of the times people don't do that. They don't buy the first $20 of Bitcoin or whatever it might have been, to make it, to understand it, to go through that process. And I've always been that kind of person. It's like, okay, I want to, if there's energy there that we can move, I want to get my hands on that. I want to play with that. Looks like something I want to play with. So this this learning process, because I'm obviously highly interested in what the technology can do, because the big story too, not just my choice, was in those early days, Bitcoin is all about helping the underbanked and the underserved. It was about the everyday individual that couldn't get a bank account because they don't have a birth certificate because they were born in a farm and somewhere in rural Rwanda. And that to me was the real altruism that got me to stay here. It's one of the reasons why I'm excited about Ethereum too, and maybe not so much Bitcoin anymore. It's like almost like Bitcoin is not, it's almost boring to me. I'm like, oh great, you do the thing, but not any of the other things that we set out to do when this sector started.
Yeah, let's jump into that. So, Tijo, you made an interesting video today. I think it was called Bitcoin is money, Ethereum is for everything else.
Yeah.
First, just talk to me about, how you discovered Ethereum and, your views on it, what you think it's going to be in the future.
So by the time Ethereum had come around, I was smart enough to know that the new Bitcoin cycle was starting at like $400 to $600. Ethereum was maybe before the ICO of Ethereum. I wasn't that yet smart enough to recognize what Ethereum was, because I liked Bitcoin. I actually bought Ripple at that moment because I had a friend who helped found that company in Canada before they ever used crypto. So I had some Ripple and Bitcoin in the early days. But Ethereum, I didn't really understand, I think, up until recently, a lot more. Part of one of the things about why I liked Bitcoin was the altruistic aspect of open source, deflation, especially the broad concepts and idea. Like you look at the broad concept of something like decentralization, right? That in itself is such a beautiful thing to think about. And I was really attracted to the way that the space had concepts. So I didn't really get it in Ethereum until maybe this year. Like I could tell it was a good investment when it was starting. Like I bought Ethereum the first few times I bought it was like $40, $50. So I was a little late to like the ICO. I was like, okay, great, new asset, great. Just grab some of these things. Like I don't know anything about tech. I just grab some of this, just pull the trigger. But this year is when Ethereum started to make a lot of sense, especially with Bear. When Roll helped me out with Bear, again, you got to get your hand on I can tell you all day and night about riding a motorcycle, but until you get on the bike or until you take the ayahuasca, like it doesn't make any sense, right? It's not as tangible. I think the automated market maker too was a big transition, because I remember using EtherDelta, and when I first saw EtherDelta, I was like, yes, this is amazing, but this sucks. This is like a horrible user experience. No one's going to use this. It's piddled out very quickly. So I think this year was such a huge influx of change into the DeFi sector that I didn't even really recognize it maybe until July, August, when I started being like, okay, something's here, because Bitcoin is DeFi, right? I'm like, this is just some new marketing hype, or am I missing something, right? I'm like, is it marketing hype or I'm missing something? So I must be missing something, because there's a lot of smart people here and there's a lot of money here right now too. So it's probably me. So I started researching a lot more into what and playing that. And again, that was the real kicker. When I can send Bear and I can just play around with these tools, that's what really drove it home for how valuable Ethereum is and what it represents. Because I showed up for the altruistic, open source, decentralized, like deflationary aspect of technology, and maybe the more optimistic sides of this stuff. When the maximalists are talking about Bitcoin as money, well, that's great, but it doesn't fix our big problems. Like, I actually think the government should be printing more money. I think that there's a lack of liquidity in the market right now. I think it's a massive problem. You have new people being born all around the world that have an immense amount of intellectual capital that we don't yet, we can't capture, right? We need more money. We need more currency, I guess, specifically going out to some degree. It's not making it everywhere. There's a lot of poor people that are just trying to survive in a daily, point-to-point basis of, I need food, shelter, water. Even if they are geniuses that could help us, or not help us, that's maybe a little posturous, but where we could invent and play together or something. Yeah, more playful. I want those people to do better. And And that's what first sold me at Bitcoin. And now I think the Ethereum family is taking that over, because the maximalist family has turned into this idea where, well, oh, there's only going to be Bitcoin. It's like, well, that defeats the whole point of decentralization, because decentralization said that there should be like almost a ton of these things. The more the merrier, right? We want like, cool, who wants to hang out? Like, what's your, as best I can, what's your guys' story? What's going on? So the last few months, the DeFi sector, being able to play around with the tools and then doing a lot more research, like you got, sent me that Gitcoin idea. So I jumped in there. We'll see what happens. I realized that I think I realized a long time ago that I don't know. My sole purpose here is to try to be as interested and then genuinely bewildered by how cool this stuff is. So, Vitalik said something I thought was funny. He's like, all the kind of really useful, boring things, but are really exciting, useless things that Ethereum can do. And that's the blend of what makes, I think, this part of the sector so valuable. And I'm a little not, it hurts a little to see that great, Bitcoin could be like a global money, but it's out of the hands of the few, out of the many already. And that's what I was really excited about. And Ethereum makes that possible again. I feel that other layer one scaling solutions, basically like building a fence around Bitcoin, like, hey, cool, Bitcoin's money, we'll just let that do that one thing, right? That's it. That's all it needs to do. It's doing what it needs to do. It stores value. And we'll build everything else around it, so we don't have the risk layer on our collateral layer, basically, which makes a lot of sense to me. I see how these are actually better off to have together. It's better to have the Bitcoin with these new liquidity pools and the ability to build exotics around it.
So we're talking a lot about trading, investment. Tell everyone about this community you're building. I'm really fascinated by what it is, when it started. It's called the Arcane Bear. Talk about the etymology of that name first, and what this group or product or community is at large.
Okay, so we'll start with the name. Was the first English word in the thesauruses that I liked, that matched the criteria for what I was looking for. Because at that time, iTunes podcast, I thought I was going to be a podcast, showed up alphabetically. So it's like, okay, well, we got to start at A because I want to be first. And then Arcane also fits this kind of mysterious, elusive aspect of, all the psychedelics and these weird Indian compositions I've studied my whole life. And then the bear, the bear is an interesting one because I knew we were going to be market focused. And a lot of people think that the bull market is like, that's where the geniuses are. But the bull markets are made of stupid people, because everybody can make money in a bull market. The people that survive the bear markets and know how to do well in the bear market are effectively the ones that you should be looking to for guidance. And the bear in like native Canadian totem represent family oriented, community oriented. They were like pretty like they're like roamers. They had they're eating a little bit of berries here, a little bit of salmon there. I just like the general, like, okay, so I'm like the mysterious bear. I'm like, I like this. This is a broad enough brand that I can follow down the nature of what I want to do. And my focus was just to create something. Like my base mission was communicate value. That was the only core concept I had. There's a few pieces I've been working on in the background where I knew that from the very, very beginning that I wanted to do basically like cause or impact marketing. I knew that I'm like, okay, I know from my SEO and my PPC stuff, my advertising days, that I can build a channel around, even if it was just turmeric tea, effectively, that would make enough money through what I was doing to have a part where we would spend our marketing budget on visiting orphanages or helping animal conservation, or what. I just was interested in making my marketing plan. That was like our marketing plan, effectively.
What about the trading aspect of that?
Well, so the trading aspect came in, it wasn't so much trading in the beginning so much as it was market analysis. So even today, I try not to let people, I tell people it's more valuable to know where you are in the market than to be in the market a lot of the time. I don't want to teach people how to trade so much as I want them to recognize where they are in the market cycle so that they can be more effective if they want to trade or invest or whatever it might be. Because one of the hardest things, because part of that dilemma came from, okay, I bought it $1,000 and it comes down to 600, 400, 300, 200, and it was at $200 for like 3 years. It was an enormous accumulation period. And so what we try to do with the trading aspect, and this was kind of an epiphany I've had recently, which is to recognize the importance of human nature in the markets. So the reason Arcane Bear was never meant to be as like a focused trading channel. It's just what people wanted. That's what they wanted. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll share with you guys just mostly that, because I make videos about make videos about turmeric tea and how healthy turmeric tea is, and it's got like 4,000 or 5,000 views. I got videos about me flying in business class and eating the satay, which has got like 20,000 views. So the channel was just supposed to be like me doing random things, and then people were like, oh, whoa, show us where we are in the markets. Like, this is what's valuable to us about what you're communicating right now. So I started to lean into that because that's what they wanted. I'm like, oh, okay, great. Everyone wants to know more about this particular topic, which is a lot of people probably come to it from like, oh, I want to make money in the markets. Like, how do I make more money? That's probably their like initial reaction. But this idea of knowing where you are in the markets being more valuable than being in the market, except for at the very start of a bull market. Right now, you should just be in the market. Who cares where we are? We're at the start of a bull market. But that aspect I got, it focused more and more as people told me what they wanted from each episode effectively. So then it became, I started to focus in on, okay, well, what's the most valuable aspects of what I've learned? Because, I don't talk about it much, but I was always interested in finding, like, I knew consciousness was everywhere. I'm like, I bet you we can find consciousness in the markets. And I think I found it this year. The pandemic was consciousness in the markets. And the day the pandemic started on the 11th of March is the day that the bull market started. And the reason that is and this is what's most difficult about that market sentiment, market analysis, trading, investing, whatever you want to call it, is that the most difficult thing to do during a pandemic, when you should be worried about your family and like, are you going to make ends meet for the next 6 to 12 months, is you should be spending money on depressed assets, especially now that there's high frequency trading and bots involved and all this stuff, because they eat the markets up fast. Nobody needs to wait. It's not like Jesse Livermore in 1930s getting called by JP Morgan and him being like, you're going to have to buy now. He's like, okay. It's like, it's much different. People just have computers, like the biggest funds on the planet right now, like Renaissance Medallion. There's no person clicking a buy or sell button. It's just computer, because we make the mistake of being human. So the markets have gotten good at exploiting our humanness effectively, because the reason the best time to buy is in the absolute height of fear is because that's when the things are most depressed. And that's when the people that have the most money can accumulate them without caring what the next 5 to 10 years might be like. So trying to share with people that the fact that you can find consciousness, or I guess more simply you could say less frivolous, would be just human nature. So I try to, remind people like, okay, well, are you meditating with your trades? Are you really planned out? Are you building a campaign? Not like, because I'm not trying to move in and out of a market cycle. I'm trying to build one big long position for the whole market cycle up. And then as soon as that stops, I'm probably going to sell short this time, because there's just as much money on the way down too. And there's even less people on that side of the trade. It's actually almost easier to some degree. So that core syllabus, was never my intention. My intention with Arcane Bear was like, if you look at the early days of the podcast, I had Bruce Lipton on the show, Thomas Campbell. He's a theoretical and practical physicist, worked at NASA, the Department of Defense. I had a bunch of weirdos on the show who were interested in science and stuff. Like, there was no real direction. So because of that, in the early days, I'm talking about Bitcoin, pineapples, and it evolved into this kind of refined community where it's people that have a lot of things in common, like people that like mushrooms and people that like turmeric tea, but the focus is where are we in the markets, and more so I think venture capital, because that's where my interest is in venture capital. Like even with being in the market cycle, it helps with venture capital, because you can know when the rest of everything else is going to be doing well too. It's not just Bitcoin that's in a bull market. The whole sector moves. Like, so we in the bear community talk about this insidious comp man, and he's the guy on the other side of the trades that's gotten like professional at taking all the retail traders' money. The guy that sold me Bitcoin at $1,000 back in 2012 or whatever it was. because this ecosystem is kind of not a zero sum game where if I have a sandwich and all of a sudden now I don't have a sandwich and someone else has that sandwich, like that's what trading is. Like one person has an asset. It's like a hot potato type of game. It's not like a win-win situation for both parties. It's not like, oh yeah, nice, we both own Bitcoin now because I bought it from you. So there's an aspect to recognizing this kind of insidious character who's perfected over hundreds of years to take your money away from you. And not only that, he hasn't changed at all. The fact that you can see this kind of footprint. Now, it doesn't always work out. You have to adjust with risk. You have to play the game, right? There's no like silver bullet to trading, but it's very, very, very surprising how accurate being able to measure human nature over thinking you're looking at like an advanced market. Like I'm not looking at indicators of like real buy and sell pressure necessarily. I'm looking at indicators of human nature. And I can see that by looking at the volatility index. I can see that by looking at the S&P 500 and gold. I can see that by looking at people in their regular day life, what's going on in the world. And more specifically, I guess what's going on in the United States seems to be a pretty big deal for the rest of the world. So because that focus in the syllabus ended up being because I was broad spectrum, communicate any value I could find. I was like, anything ayahuasca, great. This specific sector, this specific niche became the most long-term interesting because of that altruistic view in business. Like when I started business, it's because I wanted, like I said, I wanted to try to help repay the karmic debt I have for even being here. So should generally mean I'm doing something positive for the world, hopefully.
Yeah, it's an amazing community that you've built so far. The trading aspect is super interesting, as well as just, everything else surrounding that. Tijo, let's get into it. Let's get into the social money that you created that's called Bear. I want to know about how it's being utilized in your community. What's the vision for it? Where it's going? Tell the public and the users all about Bear.
So I think the first most valuable aspect was just the hands-on use for people in the community. Again, when you can kind of buy and sell on such a tiny automated market maker, it's hands-on. I'm getting on the motorbike or I'm going to ingest this item. Like you get to touch and feel that power. And I don't think you get that if you're trading, like if you're adding liquidity for like DAI and Ethereum or something like this. So the experimentation is by far the most valuable, tangible aspect for me, at least. Now the community, I decided at that moment when we created Bear that it would be the only utility is that you can get memberships or discounts by using the Bear token. So that was the only focus. So people have been well, we're going to incorporate a few other things. Like you've got that Discord thing where you can be in certain parts of the Discord by having X amount of Bear. I want to be more playful with how the technology works effectively. And that was the other main point here, is that I want to be able to play around with this stuff to see what it does. And again, that experience for other people that's been, I think, the most valuable, because it's not, I mean, a utility token is not about, you're not going to make money from having Bear. Like the goal isn't for you to like, oh, I got it because these things went up. It was just a tangible experience for the community. And I think that was beyond reprise valuable, because that's what it was for me. What it evolves to in the next bunch of years, well, that's anyone's guess. Like you and I have had chats about Web3. I think Roll is a brilliant idea. For instance, if you compare them, you've got like Theta Network, right, which is or D Live, and these guys are like, oh look, we'll build a community and we're going to directly reward you as an early participant for being the influencer. Well, guess what, schmo boy, I don't care what tech you have, it's the content creator who's more valuable than, like, YouTube's not worth anything if everybody leaves. Facebook isn't worth anything if everybody leaves. It's just worthless code. So where's the value here? And I think what Roll's done really poignantly is try to decentralize the nature of what that means for the individual content creator, because it's an easier way to do it. With Theta Network, like what, I'm going to go onto a new platform that has almost zero distribution, right? And I'm going to make videos on, and I got to post. It's going to take me more time. It's going to only get 100 views so that I can make a Theta token, right? But they already had a seed stage where they sold that token. They've gone through a bunch of rounds of funding potentially for that same token. Like this is not the early. again, the altruism of early participation factors, it's kind of one of the fun things about Ethereum 2.0 right now. It's like a whole new chance for early stakeholder participation. Like here you go. It's another chance to mine for the first time, basically. That type of stuff is really attractive to me. And what role I think is captured, and what allows creators like myself to do, first get a hands-on experience, because it's still not there yet. Like Web 3.0 isn't user-friendly yet. It's not there yet. We're getting like scalability issues that out of the way, geographic interfaces, the proper branding. Kabam, we've got a whole new internet running, and nobody will know. Like, if nobody will know. You want to spend Bear at Amazon? You probably could. It's going to be a crazy future we're moving into. So where you guys, I think, highlighted the power was to help the individual. First off, again, let's say, maybe role fails, right? Maybe we're too early in Web 3.0, because that's the only reason I could see it being like something going wrong. We're just too early in Web 3.0 or something for it to really like catch on and go where we hope it's going. We might be at that point. I have no idea. I'm not trying to say I know. I'm just saying anything's possible, but with anything being possible, because I guess it's the nature of reality, it should always include that, where you guys are sitting and helping the creators. Companies like YouTube or Facebook or Instagram could adopt and remove the risk from themselves. Like, one of the big conversations about the antitrust laws, all this stuff about Facebook having a coin as well. Okay, are you allowing too big of a player to have a spot in the like a seat at the table? These are great questions, but at this aspect, they could offset that liability by just building the Web 3.0 front end structure and allowing the content creators to, if they wanted to, hey, look, every time, like, it would be almost like view mining or something. Like YouTube, I could plug in some Bear into YouTube, and for every time you watched Bear if you watched a Bear YouTube video over the whole video, like from start to finish, you would get receive a Bear or something, right? So I think you're looking at Theta TV. Okay, we're going to build a new platform with no distribution, but the tech's better. It's like, okay, well, it doesn't help anybody. I'm on YouTube because of the distribution. I'll give what your tech does. Like, all I need is the video to go out and people to see it. That's all I want. Like, I don't need a Theta token. It doesn't do me any good. But where I think ultimately Roll could be extremely successful is companies like YouTube could adopt this technology and have no liability, because the content creators would be ultimately responsible for whatever was happening and whatever they were saying. Even with advertisements, YouTube has taken on more and more culpability for what the content is. You see this in Twitter now. They're like trying to oh my God, where does it go? Are we going to censor people? Are we going to like ban them from the content? You see a bunch of crypto people that get kicked off, probably because of affiliate links that aren't registering, or videos that have promotions in it that aren't button clicked or something. I guess the point of this is as much as we can remove that liability from these bigger companies would allow them to adopt the technology to a point where you could get to a mass adoption quickly, because something like a Theta TV is not going to mass adopt. Even if PewDiePie jumped over there, it's not going to mass adopt all these people. I like my YouTube. I've been using YouTube for a decade. Like, I don't want to switch right now. If you were to offer me an electric motorcycle, I would love to ride it, but I would still have the nostalgia for like the vroom vroom of my fiery dragon toy it's like, it's just the way we are. Like, we make Kindles where it looks like the page flips because we're nostalgic individuals. So if YouTube can adopt the overarching graphical interface and allow the underneath Web 3.0 to kind of flow a bit more freely, removes liability, and then it speeds up mass adoption. So I think that's where I'm like, yeah, I think Roll's a great idea. So part of this was part of my interest from Roll was because of the seed stage stuff. So I've been chatting with a friend about getting more into how we build a venture capital and the research and all the fun things that go along with the hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to open a fund somewhere. Jesus, it's so expensive. Anyways, the point of this is Roll was one of those ones that some of my friends were interested in. So that's when I first found you guys. Like, okay, cool. I wasn't even really I didn't find Roll because of the content creator stuff, which is funny. You think it would be, I think that's why I would have found it. That's when I started studying though. That's when I watched your podcast with Pomp. I watched Alex's Memj's chat with CoinGecko. I tried to fall down the rabbit hole of, okay, who's doing this? Where are they playing with it? Because I think it makes a lot of sense. Give everyone their currency. It'd be fascinating to see what a circular economy can do for a small community, because that's where money originally was, or currency was originally born from, was these smaller kind of subset communities. Not like, oh, we're a global community. It was, no, it's like 10,000 people in a town in rural Canada that grew enough ganja and had enough guns. It's like, oh, this is our little community, you know. It's like, it's all you needed. You just needed some ganja and some guns, and you could probably have your own money effectively.
Interesting. Yeah, so Tijo, you're in a pretty interesting space. You're a YouTuber with your own currency, and like a lot of people, I think, are going to watch this now and in the future, and just really trying to understand how you're thinking about that, and sort of what your vision for that is. So tell us a little bit more about Bear. Is it tradable? Is it buyable? How are you thinking about that? What are some ways that Bear becomes sort of financialized as an asset? Or is that even part of your view of what you should do with sort of your own sort of social money?
Well, this is probably not the answer you want, but this is what it kind of represents to me. So this smaller internal circular economy, when I first started thinking about it, it was entirely disaster relief. My thought was, could we use this to say, like, give a card to people in Vanuatu after a disaster, and maybe not even raise money for them, just give them their own token that they could trade back and forth with, like some type of stable value. Anyways, I was looking at it from disaster relief. And I was, from the days of starting to think about it, I was really, really interested to see what type of internal economy would grow from this tokenized community. Like, oh, like here's the 1,000 people in Vanuatu trying to recover after a disaster. I wanted to know what the velocity was on those types of things. I wanted to see it. So this was, Bear to me was that. It was my ability to, I don't work for the UN. I don't work at UNICEF or like any of these disaster relief places. But my interest in this technology has always been altruistic instead of financial, because I'm always at this crossroads between, I could sit outside and just chill and working and like doing stuff. And I think it's an important time to be working with the code and the technology, because you can write different types of social contracts, etc. So for me, well, the reason why I wanted to play with it is because I wanted to see what that small internal economy would look like, from just like, oh, I'm going to buy a membership. Like, here's one goods and services moving through the system from point A to point B. So this gave me a fast forward to, okay, well, we don't need a disaster, so I guess, or I'm a big enough disaster as it is that there's an internal economy we can get going after this recovery. But that, I guess to me, it's always been the experimentation more than the financial aspect, because I was never sold by, like, my first partner had like $50 or $60 million that she inherited. We were always living in $10 million homes, and I was driving really nice cars around all the time. And it doesn't mean anything. None of those things are valuable. None of those hold wealth. Like, I don't care what kind of car you drive. If you're sitting outside and it's raining and you're unhappy, you're unhappy. You're going to get in your car. Oh, great. Now it's raining in your car. You're going to find something that upsets you. And I've always been much more interested in like personal wealth than financial success, although they do go together. Like, I'm not trying to insinuate that they're actually deeply connected, I think, but from just a core, like if you separate them, having an abstract amount of wealth would never help me well, hold on, let me say it would never help me for buying cars, because it's not what I would intend to do with it. I would be interested in, like, well, how do we do disaster relief? That's what I would be. The more money I get, the goal of this is to try to see how we can help the people that are the many and at the lowest, because until they feel better, ultimately my life is not as good. I feel like my internal like psyche, when I don't know, again, this is one of those difficult parts, until you really dissolve the boundaries of self through the use of long hours of meditation. Most people think of them as like, oh, I'm Tijo, right? Like, I'm this skin and bones. Like, no, I feel we are all consciousness. We're all one like I was always going to quote Bill Hicks there for a second and go off on a rant, but we're almost one consciousness appearing itself subjectively. So because of that nature and because of the way I view my wealth, a big part of the question I'm interested in solving is how do we help other people with this technology? So Bear was just a way for me to experiment with understanding what that might be like in the future. I always try to push buttons like this. I've got friends that work with Hewlett Packard and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and there's a big wave of impact investing and just, I think impact thinking maybe more so is like psychedelics hit capitalism. It's kind of like my dream is that psychedelics and capitalism turn into like this new monster of capitalism that takes over the world. But that to me, so I guess with what Bear represents is my willingness to continue to try to experiment to hopefully do something beneficial in the long term for the people that need it the most. We do a Kiva giveaway, like we do loans through Kiva as part of our marketing plan. Like, do you know what Kiva is, Bradley?
Yeah, it's a giving platform.
Yeah, I love this stuff. This is the stuff that I get excited about. I wish I had a better answer. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna use it so you can vote on what venture capital things I'm gonna do. Like, I'm not that smart. Like, well, hold on, I'll be nicer to myself. I'm intelligent enough to know what venture capital things I'm going to invest in, but I already know how ridiculous this regulation game is. And I would just rather not. Like, it's hard enough to pay taxes properly, let alone any other abstraction of regulation. So, I think what I would like it to be, like if there's a financial aspect into how it evolves, I would like it to be most beneficially rewarding to those who are adopting it first, right? So that, let's say if you've got it, it's a token. Oh, great. We'll give you a lifetime membership. Now you've acquired this many tokens. We'll just gift it to you or something like this. It's a way to recognize, I think the same way in active, like who's opened the most emails from us and who's, they've collected like this. I don't know. It's a weird one because I'm scared of regulation. I'm scared of being thrown in jail for some stupid thing that I did because I wasn't paying attention. So I try to be very cautious about how I play with the technology technically. Otherwise, maybe I would be a bit more exploratory. I mean, I think a lot of people feel that way. I think a lot of people in this sector in general would feel that they would, and hopefully most of them are just moving forward with their plans. But this regulatory gray area is harmful for everybody, because even random people like me who just want to experiment with it feel like, oh my God, like what, am I going to make a wrong move here? Am I screwing this up somehow? But yeah, no, I don't know. What are we at? You can trade it. You're right. You can trade it on Uniswap. So hats off to the automated market makers, one of the coolest other inventions of the year so far. You can trade dirty socks for anything else that you want. It's absolutely amazing. It solves the whole dirty sock problem as well, which is fundamentally important. And what else? You can buy it on Uniswap effectively, or you can trade Ethereum for it, or I think anything else because of the way the cool Ethereum contracts. You can take any other random pair of dirty sock tokens and you can trade them for Bear. That's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like, that's kind of what my video was going over today too. Like even in one short kind of sit down, what's happening right now is fundamentally changes the way the game's played, and hopefully for the better. Like it should be that easy for someone, and it feels like we're so close. That's why it feels like we're so close to people being able to use finance, even if they were born in a barn and don't have digital identification. In blockchain cryptographic signatures, they help that. It's not just money. Identification is equally as valuable, because if you don't have that, who cares? Like, it almost doesn't matter for most people. So, I mean, Bitcoin solves that, but now it's too expensive. So now we have the same problems that we had before. It's like, okay, well, we still need to solve this problem. So I'm really, really excited about Ethereum. I'm really excited about what things like Bear and Roll represent, because they give us that experimentation process of what this is going to look like on the 20-year roadmap.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tijo. Let's wind it down with a few more questions. I just want to talk about the future of Arcane Bear for a little bit, this community. What's Arcane Bear going to look like in 2023 or 2025, or even next year? What are some of the plans that you have for your community?
So the last part of Q4 here has been trying to focus on more like adventure capital steps, because I think that there's a massive gap.
Adventure capital?
Adventure capital.
Interesting. What is that?
Well, it's just venture capital with my spin on it. So yeah. Adventure capital. It's the 2020 version of venture capital. That's all. It's the hip thing. So we can adventure with our capital. I don't know. It was just a fun play on words. So next Friday we have you on the podcast because I like Roll. I had D Hedge on the. We recorded a call this morning. Hopefully we'll have Maple on the show. So I'm trying to build out. I mean, a lot of these companies are now closed seed round and early funding rounds, etc. A little late, but I'm just trying to pick up the pieces in the back end to like catch up with where we were and then get to where we're going as time progresses, because it's easier to work on some of these other things further into the future. So that part's really exciting to me. I really like this idea of one of the things I liked about Bitcoin is, and why I said it's kind of boring now, is that it was fun because nobody else recognized it. When it's weird, when it's awkward, when it's not cool to be buying Bitcoin at like $1,000, that's when it's like the funnest, because nobody else is doing it. It's just you out, like it's like climbing a hill. It's a mountain that no one goes up. It's not so that a bunch of people can be up there with you necessarily. You go up there to enjoy the view, probably to have a little bit like, there's a space here for me to see other people that are interested in the same view, if there happen to be the few that made it to the top over there or whatever. So there's aspects of me that want to lean more into that personally too. And the trading investing, I like the ideas of growing wealth, like leveraging, like just some of the leverage plays right now are just so easy. It's just so easy in a bull market to make that work. But it's boring in comparison. Like I look at charts, I know where we are in the market. Great. We started the bull market at the pandemic. It's like we just start buying and buy all the time until we get to the top, basically. It's not that exciting. Whereas venture capital has that excitement of like kind of the top of a mountain spot where you kind of got to work to get there. You got to work to find the beauty in the view. Maybe it sounds like, oh, we're at the top of a mountain. Like what else, like to see the thing and to take in the value. I guess that's one of the parts that really interests me. Yeah. So that's kind of what we're moving into, or at least what I'm moving into. We'll continue to help people recognize where they are in the markets, because ultimately so many people get retailed that I don't think we'll have that product for life. We'll hopefully help save a bunch of people from buying at the very top and selling at the very bottom.
Cool. Yeah, arcanebear.com if anyone's curious or just hearing about this for the first time. And Tijo, lastly, just wrapping up, you're really good at building community, whether it's Arcane Bear or your YouTube channel. Last question here. Do you have any advice for people that are trying to build community, whether it's, with their own social money or YouTube or Twitch or anything like that? And then, you have a pretty successful YouTube channel as well. I'd love to know your story building that up, from 0 subscribers to the tens of thousands you have now. Share what you learned, with the folks.
Well, first off, if you know what you want to do and have a niche around it first, it might ultimately be the most successful thing. Because when I started, I didn't know what I made videos about literally everything. And we grew really quickly, but we also lost a lot of energy because of that. Now, we could make an argument here that what we actually have is a much more distilled version of the people. Whereas, okay, I'll give an example. If I had just made videos only about buying and selling Bitcoin, basically, that was it, I probably would have 4 to 5 times more followers and subscribers, and I'd probably be making a ridiculous amount of money off affiliate links or something like this. That's the truth of the story. It would have been more successful or something, whatever that means. Where this version scares people away. They're like, oh, why? It's like, oh, you get people that are interested in Bitcoin, and then they're like, oh, this drug addict picking mushrooms in the jungle, like silly drug addict, like, So it's you lose the masses if you are broad spectrum. So I guess what I'm trying to pose here is a question of when you're building your channel right off the bat, if you can stay more focused, you'll likely be more successful. I think I'm equally as successful with a smaller group of people being able to do whatever I want. I make videos. I play music in those videos. I have just beautiful women dancing around in some videos. Like I do whatever I want on my YouTube channel, and it still works. So that to me is ultimately like successful. It's I can do whatever I want, basically. But we grew really quickly because I started right in 2017, and I was making videos about pineapples and Bitcoin, DMT and Litecoin. And this kind of weird abstraction, like right in those early days, brought a lot of really valuable people to the table quickly. And then they stuck around, even if it's only like 2,000 of them or something. Instead of like, oh, I get 30,000 views a video, because we were getting 10 to 20, 30,000 views a video in 2017. And then I became less cool. And I also kind of hurt the YouTube channel because of that. Like YouTube's really promotes first, like when you first start a channel, give it everything and keep going for like the first 2 years, because it will promote you more. Whereas if like, I make videos kind of on no specific day, I make videos about so many different types of things. YouTube doesn't look upon that kindly. So they don't distribute me as widely, technically speaking, as someone who made more focused videos. So there's pros and cons to everything, but ultimately I think if you're interested, just do it. Like I made, like most of my first videos are all on like a Samsung Galaxy 7 or something like that, and it worked. If you have something valuable to share, people will listen. Yeah.
Tijo, thanks so much for stopping by. Everyone else, thanks as well. And yeah, thanks so much for stopping by Roll Radio.